Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at the Freedom Writers. So this is the film kind of adaptation of the Freedom Writers Diaries, which I've covered. Please check out that video. I did that the Monday this comes out. So this is a loose adaptation just because that type, the Freedom Writers Diaries is very much diary format. It's a series of entries of these children's and their teachers. In this case, that is played by Hilary Swank. In this film is Aaron Gruel. So, and their experiences of their lives and going through these 4 school years that they do when she had this classroom and was a new teacher. So to transfer this to film, they did a few things. This does an okay job of it, but as I'll mention later in the video, I have some issues. And yeah, he's on the front. Who is this actor? I do not know. Most people know what it is, McDreamy. But this is Patrick Dempsey. Why he's in this film, I don't know. The other major star in this film is, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Imelda Staunton. I know her most from the Harry Potter films. So, though it's rumored that she's going to be starring in The Crown, which of course I haven't finished watching in a while because toddler. So, but why Dempsey is in this film, I don't know. His character is made up. The name is not correct. But again, we'll get there. But again, the book is hard to put to film. They do an okay job. So they present this story, if you're not familiar with this. This teacher, she was a young teacher at this high school in Long Beach, California in the early 90s. And she took a group of, and this changes throughout the book because students come and go throughout her class. Basically, she made her classroom a home for these kids who were ignored and neglected. They had low scores. Most of them were bussed in from other areas that were far more violent. Gang activity, death everywhere. Essentially, these kids lived in a war zone. And that's how some of it was described in the book. Please check out my video. The book is really, really, really good. And I didn't have as long as I would love to read that, just because I was reading other stuff, and reading books like that are difficult when you have a small child. And I have a physical copy. It's definitely on my books to buy eventually, because it is very, very good. Both the film and the book are definitely on the, are for the older side. This is just because of the level of violence presented. So there's a lot of gang violence and shooting and the talk of rape and homelessness. And it also talks about the Holocaust. Quite a bit in this book and in the film. So these are harder subjects. This is definitely, maybe, depending on the maturity level of your kid, 7th grade at the absolute utter youngest. And even then, I'm iffy. I would definitely do this high school level. So just because of the level of violence, the book in particular talks about a lot more than the film shows, probably because it would be rated R. And I believe this is rated PG-13. So again, even the film, it's PG-13. The book, if you tried to put everything on there, would be rated R. If not, just not rated. There's a lot of pretty horrible stuff in that book that were part of these kids' lives. So they were coming from the roughest parts of LA. During the early 90s, the Rodney King riots were a part of this and are a backdrop. So there's a lot of stuff. We're talking the early 90s in Los Angeles, and I have no idea how bad it is now. I live in Arizona. My husband's from Irvine, California. My parents left California many, many years ago, and my in-laws don't go wandering around there. They're in southern Arizona now. They've been back and forth around the Irvine area. So they don't go traveling into East LA. So, and they did in fact go to Long Beach State. So did my parents, in fact. So my family is familiar with this area. But again, these kids were bussed in from other areas of Los Angeles. So the film depicts things okay. I mean, again, they have the PG-13 rating. They show the gang violence. At one point, they have a scene where the kids have been given journals and they allow their teacher to read them. So Hilary Swank, as the teacher, is reading them, and you have the kids actually dictating what they wrote as part of the scene. So you hear about their lives. You hear about the gang violence. One of the girls, and this was true to the book, how her father was put in prison for something he didn't do because somebody was protecting their own. And she has to go up, and she is supposed to do the same thing. She's supposed to protect her own, and she doesn't. Now, they present this later in the film than it actually is portrayed. It's almost sounding like when she's older, when she's like a junior or something. I believe this happens her freshman, sophomore year in high school, where she ends up having to do this. And she does tell the truth, in fact. And she puts her life at risk for doing it because she turned over one of her own in order to tell the truth and not have this other kid go to prison for something he did not do. In this case, murder. So it would be practically a life sentence because that's what her father was put in prison for. And you get a little bit of the homelessness, but again, you don't get as depth as the book because the film cannot do this. So they do cover the first bits and pieces of the freshman, sophomore year. It ends when their teacher gets permission to teach them their junior, senior years. Obviously, the book finishes when they graduate. So, and it's not always great. Definitely take a look at that book review or read the bloody book. So it does an okay portrayal of this. There's a couple things it does wrong. One, it gets too much into Gould's personal life, which is where Dempsey comes in. He represents her husband. Now, he has a completely different name, and the book does not touch on her personal life at all, really. I know she's married because from her Wikipedia page, and that she gets divorced during this time period, but you don't know why. So this may have been picked up through her other book, but it is not in the Freedom Writers' diaries at all. There are diary entries from the teacher, Erin Gruhl, in the beginning of each chapter where she talks about things, but she's not talking about her personal life. One thing they do get right is she does start working as a concierge at a fancy hotel on the weekends to earn extra money to help fund these kids. What it leaves out is that she ends up working with an Asian billionaire who wants to help support these kids. And he donates computers, and they promise personal computers to some of the top kids when they graduate. So he's very much involved, as is her family. Now, it shows her father being against this. Now, I do not know if this is true, because again, it's not mentioned in the books. The book shows images, has pictures, and mentions her family, her brother being there, and I think her parents were doing mentoring. So it very much, however, shows the father as an antagonist. He's disapproving of the husband. He's disapproving of what she's doing. Whether this is true, I am not sure, because again, it's not mentioned in the book. But again, that's part of what I think I see wrong in this, is they bring in her personal life too much when it wasn't, rather than focusing on the kids. And it does this as a little bit of a white savior story, which it wasn't, not really. And Gruhl did not want it presented that way, particularly when you look at the book. It's mostly the kids' stories, and that's what I wish they would have focused on, rather than her life. They also very much push the antagonism of the other teachers and the principal in the school without giving context. So the film starts with almost implying that she's a new hire of this school, that she's never been here before, and that the reason she's being given these freshmen is because she's this young, bright-eyed teacher. The reality was she did her student teaching at this high school. So she'd already been there for at least a year. Typical student teaching is you do an observation for one part of it, and you're doing at least a semester. And she made a name for herself then, going above and beyond. So she pissed them off before she was hired. And yet she was still hired, obviously, through the school board, because they liked her. So the antagonism was already there when she started as a new teacher, and that was why she was given these kids. It's because the other English teachers, and the head of the English department, did not like her because she was this young teacher who was putting a lot into it. She got herself into the newspapers because she helped one of these kids in the class, and they did not like this because to them it makes them look bad because they're not going above and beyond. So that was already there when she started as an official teacher. That's why she was giving these kids, because they were already mad at her. But it does play up the antagonism, which the book doesn't. Yes, she has to fight to teach them their junior and senior years, but she does have the one of the members of the school board, an African American man, backing her up, and she gets more support through the school board because of what she's doing. Now, this focuses a lot on their reading of the Diary of Anne Frank, which was only part of it. There was another book that they read that was written by a young girl in the Bosnian War, which was recent, who was still their age at the time. And she was someone a friend of hers they actually brought over to meet the kids. And that was another major part of it. The Museum of Tolerance was a place that they partnered with quite a bit. They also cut out the fact that Aaron Gould, I think around the time they were either sophomores, and was there around the sophomore year, she spent the summer teaching at, I think, Long Beach State. And she was doing that during the summer. And that's where she eventually went after these kids graduated. After their 4 years, she went on to teach university. And focused on how to relate classrooms like hers and how she did what she did. So she was teaching education. And she had their college students mentoring some of her kids in her class. So there was also that interaction between that. She was teaching, I think she may have been teaching night classes or something, as well as doing her high school teaching. So her kids interacted with these college students during this time, and they cut that out completely. May have been time, again, they had to condense a lot. So they cut out a lot. And again, they cut out the fact that there was a billionaire involved. They didn't borrow the computers to start writing the tales. They were given these computers by this billionaire. He gave it to them. It cut out a lot of time. Yes, she did spend time. It shows a little bit of them being in the school at night. And yes, they did. In fact, there was one of the diary entries mentioned they got in trouble with the cops because they were sneaking out the window at night. That was with her. The teacher was with him, and he didn't believe that. The cops did not believe until she was able to show her school ID and everything. It's like, yes, I am in fact a teacher here. So they would get in trouble because they were studying late at night, and this was a safe place for them to be. But yes, it plays up the antagonism a little bit more than I would like, because again, that's only a brief part of the book that's in the messages through Aaron Gould, which is at the beginning of each chapter, because she has a diary entry of her own. Otherwise, it doesn't focus for me enough on the kids, which is what the book does. And I get it, they're trying to create a coherent story, so they have to make this, they do push the white savior, which is really not what it is. These kids save themselves. Their teacher provided a safe space and the opportunity to do so, but they had to fight their own battles. It does show also something else that's a little interesting, where you had a girl who was in the honors class, who, she was the only African American in the honors class, and she was sick of it because essentially, and it shows a scene that represents basically what her experience was when her class was covering the color purple, and the teacher automatically turns to her. It's like, what was your experience? Like, seriously? You're asking me about my experience, because I'm the little like black person in this room, about African Americans in the 1920s. And yeah, the color purple is early 1900s. If you want my review on those, check those out. I've covered Color Purple, both the film and the book. I did those last year. Yeah, it was last year. It was 2021 or 2021, or was it 2022? I think it was 2022. I'm filming this for 2023 in April of 2022. My brain gets confused. Again, I also have a 2-year-old, so by the time you see this, she will be 3, close to 4. She's close to 3 now. By the time you guys see this again, she'll be over like 3.5. But again, I covered that. But this girl specifically chooses to go to Goodall's class, Ghoul's class. I'm mispronouncing her name, to get out of that environment where she felt singled out and that she did not belong. Because again, this classroom became like a family. So you did have kids coming in, and there's possible there was kids going out. But it plays up that antagonism a little bit too much, where the teacher is getting mad because she wants to transfer. I don't think it's ever mentioned whether or not they're mad that she transfers. She chooses to transfer to a different class. She chooses to get out. I mean, they don't really have a choice. Like, she wants out of the honors class, then fine, she's out of the honors class. Find someplace else to put her. But, and essentially, she doesn't do it mid-school year either. So she does it, I think, going from sophomore to junior. They also step out, and for some reason, there's a sorority at this school, which made no sense to me, but apparently it was. And there was a lot of hazing going on. And that was something that was talked about. But again, it's because they paid more attention to Ghoul's personal life with Dempsey, because for some reason they wanted to put Dempsey on here, as you can see by the cover, rather than these children in this. They lose out on a lot of that stuff. So again, my opinion, it's still a good film. I like Hilary Swank. She's a brilliant actress. I will probably cover Iron Jawed Angels on this at some point. I am still working on the 2023 lineup, so I can throw that in this year, possibly. That is another film she plays in, which that's the women's rights and the suffrage. But she's a fantastic actress. The film just took a turn that I didn't like, again, focusing more on her as the star and as this character and that personal life, rather than on the kids, which is where the book really is and where it probably needs to be. But it still does a decent job of presenting this. I have a cat in my lap. I don't know why things are moving around. But again, I'm guessing they put too much on that white savior, which I don't like, because again, that wasn't the story, which I keep repeating myself. But otherwise, it's a decent film. So, and Aaron Ghoul was very happy that Hilary Swank was playing her. I don't know what her other opinions on this. It does again, it ends with her getting permission, partially due to the school board pressure, being able to teach these kids for their junior and senior years. Yes, that is the cat in the background. That is Kendra. By the time you guys see this, she will be closing in on 14. She's closing in on 13 now. But there is a foundation. You have the Freedom Writers Foundation, which is geared toward helping disadvantaged kids achieve their goals and fight being in those environments, and to document it, I think. So and creating classrooms like the one that Ghoul created at Wilson High School during those 4 years, because that's the only time she basically taught for 4 years and then moved on to teaching university and is doing the nonprofit. So that's what she does now. So that is the end of this review. I do recommend the film. Again, it's more of a high school thing. I highly recommend the book. The book is fantastic. So, particularly if you're looking at the history in general of education, but specifically if you're looking at race history. And this is a good representation. If you're talking about Anne Frank, which again, they do a lot with the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. They're very much partnered with that during the, because again, not only do they do the Holocaust stuff, but they talk about the war in Bosnia and how it parallels their lives. And that's the big connection. And the film does an okay doing of that, on that connection. If you're teaching about the history of, particularly in the 90s, of race relations, this is a great film and a great book to look at, and how it relates to, and if you're trying to relate things like the Bosnian War or the Diary of Anne Frank, specifically the Holocaust, to modern day, this does both this film and the book, particularly the book, do a really good job of this, of looking at how, and this could also relate to different cities and how you have wars going on that are silent in many ways because they're not ending up on the national news, but there are kids that grow up where they're in gangs. They have no choice. They're in environments where they see death all the time. Their friends die, their parents end up in prison. This is their world. This is their lives. They live in what amounts to be a war zone within the United States. So, I have a cat pulling on my mic. Sorry about that. But that's what these books, and the film does, it does a decent job of kind of showing that to an extent. So they're both good to watch. Again, this is more leaning toward the upper grades, high school level, as is the age of these kids, to when you want to be reading it. If your kids are in that environment and you think they are mature enough to handle this, obviously parents have the option to, of course, show it younger. But I'm going to err on the side of caution, just because I'm a middle class white person who lives in the suburbs. I would not show this to my kid until she's at least 13, 14 years old. So, with a lot of discussion. So, they are great. So, that is the end of this video. If you like what you see, be sure to check out the rest of the channel, or the cat. Kendra, you're being annoying, as she is. Yes, she will periodically show in videos. She's in here with me quite frequently. Please check out the rest of the channel. I cover films like this. I cover books like the Freedom Writers Diaries, nonfiction. I cover fiction. I have quite a few book series going on, which are definitely in the teen, middle school range right now. I cover more mature books like this. I've covered Donald Wood's Deco. I covered The Color Purple. I did the Joy Luck Club, both the book and the film on both of those. So I also cover board books. I have some previous board books. Again, I have a small child. And lots and lots of picture books, which we do. So I cover a wide range. We are a secular homeschooling family, so I do cover that stuff. We are going to be, by the time you guys see this, we'll have at least 2 travel videos up. But normally that's focusing on traveling with a small child, because that's what I have, a small child. My daughter will, in fact, be 3 by the time for our second travel video, which will have already been up, because both of them will happen around August. We're also going to be covering some more board games. Those should be up, and other fun stuff. My daughter, again, by the time you guys see this, she'll be about 3.5, so we'll just slowly getting into more educational stuff. So, and I will review that as we go along with the travel stuff and lots more books and even some fun films. We have some fun films. So be sure to check out the channel. Check out what I've got up already. And like and subscribe. Leave a positive comment if you have one, and look forward to more. Thank you.